Welcome back to On the Same Page. We are on Daf Beis Amud Beis 2b of Maseches Kiddushin. We are about 10 lines, 11 lines or so down from the bottom of the page. It's the wider lines, the end of the second wide line. The Gemara asks, "My taima tani shalosh." What is the reason we already learned last week that the Mishnah says, Ha'isha niknis b'shalosh drachim. A woman is acquired, is betrothed in 3 ways, and the word shalosh we noted last week is lashon nekeva. It's feminine conjugation, and the Gemara had asked why it uses the feminine. It usually uses the masculine, and the Gemara said because it wanted to use the word drachim, ways, and drachim is feminine, at least we explained, when used in context relating to women. Drachim, derech, ways, we actually said can be used either way, but when talking about a woman, it's conjugated feminine. So the Gemara asks, why does it say drachim in the first place? My taimatami shalosh mishum drachim. We said why it says shalosh in the feminine is because it wanted to say drachim, ways, which is conjugated feminine when referring to females or something related to them. But nisni devarim v'nisni shlosha. Why use the word drachim derech in the first place? Use the word devarim like davar, like a matter. There's 3 things, 3 matters, three things that can be used, 3 methods, 3 that can be used to acquire, to betroth a woman. So why not use the word devarim? And that can be conjugated masculine, v'nisni shlosha, and then it would use the masculine conjugation, which again is the more common use in Mishnayos and in the Torah itself when using numbers to conjugate. So why did it use the word devarim, matters, and it used drachim, ways? Because it wanted to, in the list, it needed to mention bia, intercourse, is one of the 3 ways in which a woman is betrothed. Ubia ikri derech, and bia, intercourse, is called derech. Where is it called derech? Because it says, the verse says in Mishlei, in Proverbs, v'derech gever ba'alma, the way of a young man with a young woman. It's, in the context, it's actually talking, there may be different ways to understand it, but one way to understand it is it's talking about a adulterer. Kain derech isha min ha'efes, so is the way of a woman who's an adulterer. It's talking about that it's something that's done, but it doesn't leave any evidence of it in the context. But the point is, for us, it uses the word derech, the way of a gever, of a young man with a young woman, the way of a woman who's adulterous, but it uses the word derech, it uses the word way to describe the intercourse that's taking place between them. So because the word derech is appropriate for it to describe, we see it's used to describe bia, intercourse, so therefore it made sense in the Mishnah to say derech, 3 derachim, 3 ways. Says the Gemara hatenach bia. So that's good for one of the 3 ways that we mentioned, bia, intercourse. Kesef ushtar ma'yikol memer. What about the other 2 ways? Kasef, money, and shtar. A document. There were 3 ways mentioned in the Mishnah for betrothing a woman. So, ma'yikol memer, what are you going to say about that? Why does it say derachim and not devarim, matters? So the Gemara says mishum bia, because of intercourse. So one of them, you're not going to use 2 different words. There's 2 devarim and 1 derech. Like that's already, we wouldn't do that. So once it had to use the word drachim for the word bia, which is appropriate to describe bia, intercourse, so therefore that's the language it used. So the Gemara asks, "V'tani tarti atuchada," but you're going to describe the other 2 things as derachim because of that one. The one is outnumbered, so just use the word devarim, even though it's appropriate to say derachim, ways, for bia. But bia is outnumbered by kesef and shtar, so use what's appropriate for them and use the word devarim. So the Gemara explains, hanach nami tzarech bianinu. Those also are needed, are necessary for bia, for intercourse, because ultimately what Kiddushin will lead to is the man and the woman having this relationship now, and a major part of that is their marital relations, the intercourse that takes place between them. So therefore, it's all derech. If derech describes bia, describes intercourse, which takes place between a man and a woman, so it's appropriate in the Mishnah to use that word derech for all three forms of betrothal, kesef, shtar, and bia. V'iba yisema, or we could give a whole different answer. You want to know why it uses the word derachim in the Mishnah to describe the ways in which a betrothal takes place? Hamani Reb Shimon. Who is this Mishnah going like? It's going like the opinion of Reb Shimon. D'Tanya, we learned in a brisa. Reb Shimon Omer. Reb Shimon says, Mipnei ma amra Torah ki yikach ish isha, v'lo kasav ki si lakach isha le'ish. Why did the Torah say when a man takes a woman, and didn't say when a woman is taken to a man? And part of what's going into this question may be, like we alluded to last week, we mentioned last week, this may be alluding to the idea that the Mishnah says isha niknis. It doesn't say ha'ish koneh, right? The Mishnah says a woman is acquired. It doesn't say a man acquires, because it wanted to bring out the idea that a woman has a choice in this. She can't be betrothed by force. So it used it from her perspective that she becomes acquired, but she's involved in this. So then why did the Torah use that language? Why does the Torah say ki yikach ish isha when a man takes a woman? That might imply that he can force her to marry him, which is not true. So, but Reb Shimon explains, you know why it talks about it from the man's perspective? Because it's the way of a man to go looking for a woman and to court a woman. And it's not the normal way for a woman to go out looking for a husband. Mashal Adam, we can understand this with the following parable, the Gemara says. Reb Shimon continues to explain. Mashal Adam sha'avda lo aveda, like a man who lost an item, he lost an object. Mi chozer al mi, who goes looking for the object that he lost? Ba'al aveda mechazer al avedaso. It's the one who lost the object who goes looking for the object, not the object that goes looking for the one who lost it. Now, why is this relevant here? God forbid we're not referring to a woman as an object. So what does this mean? So actually it's a beautiful idea. The idea is that, Rashi mentions it here, that what the Gemara is telling us is, we know from Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve, that Chava was created from the side of Adam. And then when he marries her, he reunites with her. It's like a lost part of him that he reunites. And the Gemara is telling us that that's true in every marriage. Every marriage, there's this reunification. We have this concept of ishto kagufo. A man is a woman, a wife is like the man's body itself. That in a sense, there's a reunification of their souls coming back together, because every woman, in some sense, is already a part of the man, even before they're married, and now it's his job to go and find that part, go and find her, and bring her back to him, to reunite and make him complete. So, but who is it normal to go? Reb Shimon says it's normal for the one who lost the piece to go looking for it. That's what Reb Shimon says. Now, what does that have to do with us? So he describes it as darko shalish lechazer. It's the way of a man to go and look. So this is normal for a man to go seek out a wife. And therefore, it's appropriate in the Mishnah to use the word derech, that a woman is acquired in three ways. What it means by derech is, Rashi's language is orech ara. It's the way of the land. It's normal. It's derech eretz, like we say. It's the way of the land. It's the way that people behave. That's how they should behave, and that's normal for the man to go and look for a wife. And therefore, it was appropriate for the Mishnah to use the word derachim, that a man acquires, or a woman is acquired to a man in three ways. Derachim also is alluding to this idea that this is the way. The way is for a man to go and try to acquire, to go and betroth a woman. So the Gemara continues. It says, now that we're explaining it in that context, in our Mishnah, we understand that the word derech has a deeper meaning. It's saying it's the way of the world. So let's look at some other Mishnayos that also use the word derech and see if we can apply the same kind of explanation. Says the Gemara, we're now 4 lines from the bottom, B'haditnan, that which we learned in the Mishnah that we mentioned last week, B'shiva drachin bodkin es hazav. We talked about a zav, a man who has certain kinds of emissions. We have to check him, we have to investigate to make sure, before we consider him tameh, ritually impure, we have to discern whether he did something that brought these about. So if he ate certain foods or drank certain drinks, so then that causes these emissions, and that wouldn't make him tameh. So we said there are 7 ways that we check him. We check for 7 things. So the Gemara says, Lisni devarim. Let it say not 7 ways, but 7 matters that we look into. Why does it use the word derachim? So Hasam there, Hakamash Malan, there it's teaching us the darka de michla yisera lasuye lidei ziva. That it's the way, if one eats a lot, that it can bring about ziva, these emissions. V'darka de mishnaya yisera lasuye lidei ziva. If a person drinks too much, it also can lead to ziva, to these emissions. And that's why I use the word derachim. There's 7 ways. It's saying that these are ways, this is the normal way, is that these things, we have to look into, we have to investigate. Did he engage in these types of behaviors? Did he eat a lot? Did he drink a lot? Because because those are ways in which it brings about ziva, these emissions. So again, the word ways is appropriate over there. The haditnan, and now which we learned in a Mishnah, esrog shava le'ilan v'gimel drachim, an esrog tree is similar to other fruit trees in 3 ways. Again, it uses the word drachim. It's similar in 3 ways. Lisni devarim. Let it say 3 matters. Why does it say 3 ways? Again, what's with this word drachim, this word ways? Rashi tells us the 3 ways that a esrog tree is similar to another tree is with regards to arla, neta, rivai, and shmita. Arla is that a tree is forbidden to benefit from in the first 3 years of its growth. The 4th year, that's called neta rivai, and it's like kind of like meiser shenim, where you have to eat the fruit in Yerushalayim. And then the 5th year becomes permitted. And then shvius, the shmita, is the sabbatical year. So how do we track a fruit from that tree to decide what year it is? What year of the tree is it? So meaning when does the year of the tree? When's the tree's birthday, so to speak? So Rashi tells us that we go by chanata. We go by the blossoming of the fruit, like a tree, not by when it's picked. So whenever it blossomed, that's the year that we consider it to be from. And we're working within the Shemitah cycle. So if it blossomed, let's say, in the 7th year of the Shemitah cycle, then it's from the 7th year. If it blossomed in the 6th year, then it's from the 6th year, even if you picked it in the 7th year. And the same for the life of the tree. If it blossomed in the 3rd year of the tree, then it's arla, even if you picked it in the 4th year. And if it blossomed in the 4th year, it's neta rivai, even if you picked it in the 5th year. You go by the blossoming, and that's what we normally do for fruit trees. But we'll see in a moment, it's different in one way. But at this point, we want to know, why does it use the word derachim and not the word devarim? Ways and not matters. It's similar in 3 ways. Doesn't say it's similar in 3 matters. The Gemara answers, the bottom line of the page, Mishum deba'inan masnisin seifa. We need the end of the Mishnah there, because it says uliyarek b'derech echad, and it's similar to vegetables in one way. An esrog tree is similar to vegetables in one way. That one way is that vegetables, we don't go by chanata, by blossoming, we go by when they're actually picked. And a esrog as well, we go by when it's picked with regards to meiser. We go by when it's picked with regards to meiser. With regards to other things, we go by when the fruit blossomed, but when it comes to meiser, we go by when it's picked. And we'll explain why in a moment, but meiser is the various tithes. So there's meiser rishon, which is given to the Levi. You tithe the 10th and give it to the Levi. There's meiser sheni, which is you tie the 10th thing eating in Yerushalayim, that in Meiser Ani, you give it to the poor. So it's important though to know what year it's from, because Meiser Rishon is effective every year of the Shemitah cycle, except the Shemitah year itself, I think, but so for the 6 years. But Meiser Sheni is only operational, the ones that you have to eat in Yerushalayim. You have to tithe and eat in Yerushalayim fruit from the first year, the second year, but not the third year, the fourth year, fifth year, but not the sixth year. So the first two of each set of 3 years, those fruit are Meiser Sheni. The third year and the sixth year, you tithe only Meiser Ani. Meiser Rishon for the Levi, but also Meiser Ani for the poor. So there's this difference. The first 2 years, there's Meiser Sheni. The third year, there's Meiser Ani. The fourth and fifth years, there's Meiser Sheni. The sixth year, there's Meiser Ani. So you have to know whether this is a fruit that you're supposed to bring to Yerushalayim, or whether it's a fruit that you have to tithe and give to the poor. So what you do with it? What year is it from? So it depends when you pick it. That's whatever year you pick, of the Shemitah year you pick it in that way, at least when it comes to an esrog tree, you go by when you pick it. So because it wanted to say in the second part of the Mishnah that it's similar to a yarek, to vegetable in one way, that's why it used the word ways, drachim. Well, that's not so helpful. Ask the Gemara, Seifa Nami Nisni Davar. In the Seif also, they're also like it say Davar. It's similar to a vegetable in one matter. Why does it use the word way? So the Gemara answers, Hasam Kamash Malon, because there it's teaching me something. It's teaching me, we're on the top of Gimel Amad Aleph, 3a, Hasam Kamash Malon, Did Darche de Esrog ki Yarek. It's teaching me that the way of an esrog is like a vegetable. That there's something that makes them similar. It's not just, random that we say that an esrog is like a yarek, like a vegetable, with regards to meiser, just because. No, it's because it's similar to yarek, and therefore the rule of yarek, of vegetables, applies to esrog when it comes to meiser. It doesn't apply by arla and neta rivai. That's only true by trees, but it will apply with regards to meiser. So in what way is it similar? What way is darche de esrog ki yarek? What way is an esrog like a vegetable? Because ma yarek darko li gadol al kol mayim. Just like a vegetable, it grows on all water. What does that mean? It means it's not enough just to have rainwater. It needs all water. It needs irrigation as well. Uveshaslu kitasu isuro. And the halacha is that when you pick it, that's when you have to take meiser. That's how you determine what year it is. Depending on what year of the Shemitah cycle you picked it in, that will determine which meiser to take. Af esrog darko li gadol al kol mayim. So too an esrog, it grows on all water, meaning an esrog can't rely only on the rainwater. It needs a little assistance. It needs some irrigation. It's just like a vegetable in that sense. So therefore, v'shas l'kitaso isuro. Therefore, its meiser is taken based on when it's picked. So that's why I use the word ways. It's similar to a vegetable in one way. By way, we mean the halacha is similar, but the reason that the halacha is similar, that we follow when you pick it, when it comes to meiser, is because it's similar to a vegetable in that it grows only on all mayim, all water. It needs not just rainwater, but also irrigation. I think the reasoning why for this, that you would go, the fact that it needs all water, you follow the time that you pick it, is because I believe that something that grows only from rainwater, so the rainwater goes into the ground early on, and it already has all its nutrients early on, and so you would go by the blossoming, as opposed to something that needs continued watering. So then, even later, it's still growing, it's still getting its water later, it's still getting its nutrients, and therefore you wouldn't just go by when it blossoms, but when it's actually picked. I think that may have something to do with it. Okay, in any event, we're 4 lines down. The Gemara says, "V'hadetnan koy yeshbo drachim shava l'chaya." There's a certain animal, I think it's something related to a deer, but it's called a koy, and it has ways in which it's the same as a chaya, a undomesticated animal. V'yesh bo drachim shava lebehema, and it has ways in which it is similar to a behema, domesticated animal. V'yesh bo drachim shava lechaya u'behema, and there are certain ways that it's similar to both a chaya, an undomesticated animal, and a behema, and a domesticated animal. For certain halachos, v'yesh bo drachim sheino shava lo lechaya v'lo behema, and there are certain ways that it's not similar neither to a domesticated animal or an undomesticated animal. So, for example, Rashi tells us, how is it similar? How is a kai similar to a chaya? It's similar in that when you shecht it, you have to cover the blood, which is a halacha that applies to chaya, to an undomesticated animal. It doesn't apply to a behema. But it's and you have to do that for a kai also. You have to cover the blood. It's similar to a behema in that the chaylev is asur. Chaylev asurim, forbidden fats, which are forbidden for a behema, for a domesticated animal. They're also forbidden on a kai. It's similar to both of them in that both chaya and behema both require shchita, slaughtering, ritual slaughtering. So too, the kai needs a proper shchita. And it's not similar to either of them because you wouldn't be able to make it with either a chaya or a behema. It's its own species, and you couldn't mate it with either of those animals, with either of those types of animals. So, but that's what it says. It says it's similar, it's in certain ways different, etc. But it uses the word dirachim. And the Gemara asks, nisni devarim. Like it say matters. Why does it say ways? Visu, and furthermore, hadatnan, we have a Mishnah that says, zu achas min adirachim sheshavu gitei nashim l'shachrui avadim. The Mishnah says that this, the certain thing that it described, is one of the ways that gitei nashim, divorce documents, bill of divorce, is similar to freeing a slave. So there's a certain way that it's similar, and the way it's similar, Rashi tells us, is that if you bring it from another country, you have to say b'farei nechtam. You have to say it was written in front of me, and it was signed in front of me. In that way, that these two are similar, both the bill of divorce and a bill for setting a slave free. So the Gemara asks, though, why does it say it's one of the derachim, it's one of the ways? And this need devarim say it's one of the matters in which they're similar. And here we don't have any fancy answers like we had up to now, that it's to teach you that this is the normal way of the world, or they're similar in certain ways. There's no way we don't have an explanation for why the word derachim, ways, is better in these two Mishnahs. In the Mishnah about the kai, this interesting animal, in the Mishnah about the similarities between a get and a shtar shichrur, a document releasing a slave, we don't know why it uses the word derachim over devarim. So we basically have to walk back this whole approach that says that we choose the word derachim when it's appropriate to describe a way because it doesn't fit in over here. Ella, so rather, how do we choose the word derachim and how do we choose the word devarim? When do we choose each one? Ella kol hecha deka plugta tani derachim. Wherever there's a distinction to be made, then we use the word derachim. So if we want to list, there are ways that it works and ways that it doesn't, or right. So for example, by us, there's three ways that a woman is acquired, but we want to also exclude another way, as the Gemara will explain soon, that she's not acquired. You can't do Kiddushin. So whenever we're drawing distinctions, it's appropriate to use the word derachim. And wherever there's nothing to distinguish, then tani devarim. Then it says devarim matters, right? Also, for example, in the case of the esrog, we could go through each one, but we won't. But the esrog also, it says it's similar in certain ways to this, it's similar in certain ways to this. There's a distinction to be drawn. But if it is the same always, then it's appropriate to use the word devarim. And dekanami, the Gemara says we can infer this, dekatani seifa, because the end of the Mishnah says, with regard to the esrog, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, esrog shavalilon lekol davar. An esrog is equal to a tree, to regular fruit tree. An esrog tree and a fruit tree are the same l'chol davar, for every matter. He doesn't say b'chol derech, in every way. He says for every matter, because when we don't draw any distinctions, it's appropriate to use the word davar, matter, And when we're making distinctions, we use the word drachim. It's just a stylistic thing. We use the word ways. Shema Mina, we can learn from here that this approach is correct. Okay, the Gemara now asks, our Mishnah said that there are 3 ways that a woman is acquired and 2 ways in which she acquires herself back. Ask the Gemara, Minyana de Reisha Lemutimai, what's the number coming to exclude Minyana de Seifa Lemutimai? What's the number in the second clause coming to exclude? Meaning I can count. Why do you need to tell me that there's 3 ways? Just tell me the ways and I could count them. Right? You have to tell me there's 2 ways that she acquires herself back. Just tell me the ways and I can figure out how many there are. The fact that it says there are 3 ways, it's coming to teach you, and that's it. And it's coming to exclude something. Don't think that something else can fit in. So the Gemara says, what's it coming to exclude? Minyana de Reisha, the number, there's 3 ways that in the Reisha, in the first clause, is limute chuppah. It's coming to exclude chuppah. You might have thought that you can sanctify, you can betroth a woman through chuppah, through standing under a canopy. Says the Gemara, no. Although that works for nisuin, doesn't work for kiddushin. That's to complete a marriage, but that doesn't work for the original betrothal. Ula Rav Huna da'amar chuppah koneh, mikal v'chomer. Rav Huna, we're going to learn later on Daf Hey, learns that chuppah does work for kiddushin. He learns a kal v'chomer, a logic a fortiori. We'll see what his logic is later. But according to Rav Huna, that it does work, limute mai. Then what is it coming to exclude? What is the number 3? There's 3 ways a woman is acquired. What's that coming to exclude? Limute chalipin. It's to exclude a kinyan chalipin. A kinyan chalipin is a sort of a trade. What the way it works is if let's say, we do this, we see this sometimes. If I want to sell you something or give you something so you can acquire it by if I lift up something of yours and take it, so then what I'm giving you becomes yours, or vice versa. If you lift up mine, so what's mine becomes yours. So salkadaita chamina. So I might have thought, ho'il v'gamar kicha mistei Ephron. Since we learn the method of kiddushin that kesef works, that money works, from the word kicha, the words kach, take, from the sale of the field of Ephron to Avraham, the Amaris HaMachpelah, and there it's a sale of a field. That's how we know that kesef works. So masade mekanya b'chalipin, af isha nami mekanya b'chalipin. So I might say, well, also a field can be acquired through chalipin, through this exchange. So I might say that a woman can also be acquired through chalipin. King in Sudar, right? Just with lifting up a handkerchief, he can acquire her, or she could just lift up the handkerchief. I think that's how it would work. But Kamash Malan, that's why the Mishnah said, no, there's 3 ways. Chalipin doesn't work. That kind of exchange doesn't work. But we know that it works by a field. Actually, that's how it worked by Boaz in the story of Rus, that he acquired the field through chalipin, and so we know it works by a field, but the Mishnah is coming to teach me that it doesn't work for kiddushin. Ask the Gemara, ve'ema hachanami, maybe it does, right? Why not? Why shouldn't chalipin work? And especially if we're learning from Stay Ephron, we're learning from the fields of Ephron. So chalipin should work. This method of making a kinyan, of making a transaction through lifting something up should work. So the Gemara says, no. Chalipin isnu pachos mishava pruta. Because a kinyan chalipin can work on even less than a shava pruta. You lift up a handkerchief, it works. Yeah, that's all you need. Ve'isha b'pachos mishava pruta lo mekanya nafsha. But a woman would never sell herself for less than, right, allow herself to be acquired for less than a shava pruta. That's just a disgrace to her. And so she wouldn't allow that, and therefore, it's a genayla, it's a disgrace for her. So therefore, the whole method is out, and a woman is not acquired with chalipin, and therefore the Mishnah made sure to exclude it. Now, what about the Seifa? Minyana de Seifa limutenai. In the Seifa, in the second clause of the Mishnah, which says that she acquires herself back in two ways. What's the number two coming to exclude? What way can she not acquire herself back that you might have thought she could? Limuute chalitza. It's coming to exclude the method of chalitza, the process that's used by, we talked about a yavam, right? When a man dies without children, so then his wife is supposed to or may marry, either has to marry the brother or he has to do chalitza to her. He has to do this process where he doesn't accept her. He takes off his shoes, spits on the ground, right? There's a process described called chalitza. You might think that any husband can do chalitza to his wife. You might have thought you could learn from a kavachomer, a fortiori, that all the more so from Yavama. That ma Yavama she'ena yotza beget, yotza b'chalitza. Because if a Yavama, a woman who falls to Yibum, a get doesn't work according to the Torah. You can't give her a get. The only way to divorce her, unless you first marry her, then you would give her a get. But if you don't marry her, if the Yavam, the brother, doesn't marry her, the only thing you could do is chalitza. And chalitza works, but get doesn't. So a regular woman, sheyotza beget, where a get does work, eino din sheyotza b'chalitza, we say all the more so that chalitza should work. If by a Yavama, get doesn't work, but chalitza does, so by a regular woman where get works, all the more so chalitza should work. Kamash malan, that's why the Mishnah tells us no, that a woman only is released, only reacquires herself in two ways, but not chalitza. Again, we ask ve'ema hachanami, but maybe it does work. We have a kavachomer. We have a logic that's showing us that it should work. Says the Gemara, no. Amarkra sefer krisus, because it says very specifically with regards to divorce that you give her a sefer krisus. You give her a document of severance to sever the ties. Sefer karsa ve'eng davar acher karsa. What we learn from there is that a sefer, a document, can sever her, can release her, but no other thing. But chalitza cannot. His death does, because then he's dead. But in terms of a method while he's still alive to separate her and for her to reacquire herself, it's sefer karsa. It has to be a document to do it. You need a get, and there's no other way to do it. Thanks so much for listening. We'll continue from here next time.